This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I have one of my favorite people in the world, Christina, and she is the founder of Everyday Philosophy, a company that teaches philosophy to business executives. We'll dive into this because that is a whole lot. So we'll get to the story as to where Christina and how Christina got to where she is today. Welcome to the show, Christina.
Hi, Sasha. Hi, everybody.
Hi. So let's start. I always like to start in the beginning, in the very beginning, as to the spark, as to what really got you to kind of motivate to move through to start something for yourself.
So I kind of liken it to reaching a point of just not being able to withstand where I was and what I was doing any longer. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really, that's the whole point of growth. And that's how sparks happen, is when something sometimes becomes untenable and a change is imminent. And that's where I kind of found myself. I had spent over 2 decades in the marketing and advertising industry, and uh, was feeling a certain tension with other things that I was passionate about, and I couldn't necessarily pursue because I was in this career. And so what ended up happening was I ended my advertising and marketing career and decided to take a leap and pursue what I was passionate about. How it all happened and how it started actually was about a year after I decided to take a leap. So, that's what I find the most interesting, is sometimes where you end up is not exactly where you start. So,
All the time, all the time,
yeah.
all the time.
But
Yeah.
the actual making the decision and saying, okay, I'm going to really do something radical, that happened first.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love that you say that, it's landing, or feeling like you've landed or where you're going, because I think, and I love that you bring up the word growth, because I think with everything, there is growth when, as you said, when you took the leap of faith and you jumped off the launching pad to start something for yourself. But then also it's like there has been a lot of growth from jumping off that launching pad and getting to where you are today as well. So let's dive into that.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's start. You walked out, you stepped into something that you were passionate about. Let's talk about what that passion was and kind of, how you kind of, catapulted into that direction.
So it's really interesting because the first area that I wanted to focus on was actually more probably healing healing or getting through some of the feelings I was having about what I had actually been through. So,
Yeah.
the industry that I was in is a very intense industry. It physically, mentally, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically. And I think a lot of people experience that. And so when I first started to think about, all right, what's my model going to be and what am I going to do? I had this idea that I would be working in the realm of organizational morale and cultural morale, and basically working with human resources people and business executives around how to do more morale boosting. I think part of it was sort of a remnant because of me wishing that there was someone in my previous positions that was there to help me with my morale. And I kind of felt like, well, if I felt that way, maybe other people would feel that way and there would be a need there. And I
Yeah.
think that was actually a really good place to start. I mean, it was certainly a good intention. It was certainly a good impulse. But And there were certainly things that I could bring to the table right away in terms of my skill set, my experience, my education. But there was still a very significant aspect of all this, that was a very big aspect of all of this that was missing. And there's kind of a story about how I launched into the next iteration of what I ended up actually doing. Do you want me to tell
Yeah.
you that, or did you want?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
please, let's talk
Okay,
about it.
cool. All right.
Right.
So it's actually a funny story. So it'd been about a year, and I joined kind of a small solopreneur, small business boot camp type of group, who could, because I knew at some point, like, I really didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know how to sell myself. I really didn't know how to put myself out there. I felt like I needed some tools and some information and some structure. So I went to the folks at Red Sapiens. Hi, Joe and Jeff. Anyway, so they're amazing, and also Heather Mathis. And I was working with them, and I was going through a marketing module.
Okay.
Actually, I was
Love
going
it.
through. They were putting me through a marketing module specifically around positioning and being able to really distill what I did, uh, down to a few essential components that would then fit into like a hero's journey framework. And Jeff was asking everyone at the table, okay, everyone, so think about, like, what is your magic wand?
Yeah.
What is it that makes you really special? And I started to feel this, like, oh my God, I don't
Energy.
know what
Yeah.
my magic wand is.
Okay. Okay.
And everyone around me knew what their magic wand was. And I started to get really, like, anxious. And it was, you know, it had already blown, like, I had already said, well, I do employee engagement and morale boosting but like, it didn't feel right. And so everyone is going around, and I brought in I started to get really agitated and upset, and like, that's when my philosophy training kicked in.
Yes.
And this is exactly what happened. I was like, I don't know what my magic wand is. And sort of the Socratic inquiry came in and said, is that true? And
Like,
and
is it
my
somewhere deep layered
yeah,
and
this is all
percolating
an
to
inner
the
voice
surface?
going
Yes.
on. And it was like, is that true? And part of my I said, no, that's not true. And then it was like, then what is your magic wand? And I was like, it's philosophy.
Yeah.
And so, because for a really long time, I thought my background, my, like, years and years and years of study and practice in philosophy, was a completely separate thing and should never, ever enter into business at all. And yet it was such a significant part of me and who I was and what I loved. And in that moment, it was like, boom,
But
like,
when you say
this
that
is
it
it.
was that it should never enter into business ever at all, that was a pre-ingrained like thought process that came from somewhere, right? Hmm.
Yeah, it was something I pursued in my personal life.
Yep.
And I used it quietly
Yes.
in my
Yes.
professional life.
But I think that's
Uh,
interesting though, right? I
yeah,
think yes.
it's very interesting that that it never occurred to me that I could merge these two
Two.
things.
Yeah.
And but when it did, it was like, okay, so this is where it gets funny.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, like, I go, oh, and in the middle of this, like, people are looking at me like, And I'm starting to get emotional.
Yeah.
And so I go to Jeff, the marketing instructor. I was like, "Can I talk to you outside, please?" And
Yeah.
he's like, yeah." So I pulled him outside and I was like, I didn't I didn't know what my magic wand was. And now I know what my magic wand is. And he's like, "What is it?" I said,
Yeah.
"It's philosophy. I study philosophy and I love philosophy. I don't want to teach people how to use it in business." And he looked me dead in the eye. He said, "Now you're interesting."
Oh, I love that.
And from that moment on, it was like, okay, uh, I'm going to make philosophy my vocation. Now it's just a question of, like, in what way? How do I express it? What do I do? That was really the moment for me where I became fully integrated
Yes.
with
Yes.
what I wanted to do.
How amazing. How amazing that you, but I want to take a step back because it's interesting because a lot of people will kind of block that from actually occurring. So the fact that you were open to let it happen naturally and organically, where you just maybe internalize a quiet space for yourself, that it actually came through, right? Because somebody could have left that meeting and struggled maybe for weeks or months. Like, what's my magic wand? What's my secret sauce? Like, what makes me different? And just kind of hammered on it. So really incredible story that it just kind of hit you like that. Okay, so then next.
So then it was a matter of, um oh my gosh, like, how am I going to get people to even understand this,
Buy
because
into this, yeah.
and buy into it as a solution. And uh
As part of their like day to day now, really.
yeah, and so I started doing like a bunch of different things. Like, I
Yeah.
wrote a book, I was doing talks, I was doing one-on-one coaching, I was, I was just experimenting and through, like, with a lot of different modalities. And I think that you have to walk in the wilderness for a while doing that,
Yeah, I love that.
because you have to figure out, um, in what way people want to interact with these ideas.
I like that.
And it took me a long, long time to be able to figure that out. I finally figured it out. And that's like sort of the next story. But I would say for a good 2 years, 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
I did a podcast, I wrote a book, I did one-on-one coaching, I did workshops, I tried a number of different things. And then I had my next epiphany, which actually had to do with my naming convention and my brand, the
Yes.
actual
Yes.
brand. Because I
Yeah.
think, I don't think you necessarily land the brand right away either.
No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, coming from two marketers for sure. And I think a lot of people struggle with, let's launch a business. We have an amazing idea. The name is like, I don't know. I don't know. And I love that you were patient enough in yourself. And I love the fact that you say you have to walk in the wilderness, however long it is for you to really get to that right kind of period and that right kind of framework of like where you're wanting to take this. Okay.
Yeah. Uh, and
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 it's
I
not
don't want
failure, right? We want to make sure that it's understood that that's not failure.
right, exactly. And I do want to emphasize that, you know, for some people, 2 to 3 years does not sound like a long time. Some
Yeah.
people maybe in this who've been doing their thing for like 10 or 20 years could be like, "Oh, that's so cute. You're two
Yeah.
or three." And then some people would be like, "Oh my God, 2 or 3 years? Holy crap." And it's like, it's gonna take as long as it's gonna take. And I did have some challenges. My challenge was, first of all, people have all of these kinds of ideas about philosophy.
Yeah.
And so it was very niche what I was doing. It was like, I'm one of four people in the world
Wow.
that do what
Not
I
even a
do.
handful. Not even a handful.
Not even a handful that
Yeah.
do what I do. And the only person that does it in the way that I do it, and of those handful of people, the only woman that does it.
Wow.
So it wasn't something that what very many people could understand. They were intrigued by it. Like there was certainly a lot of curiosity. I've never had someone be like, "That sounds silly," you know.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not interested in that. There's always that curiosity, but I'm certainly not like a CPA, right? Where
Yeah.
people, anyway. So that was part of the process, is really understanding, how do I talk about that? That's what the 2 or 3 years was all about.
Yeah.
How do I talk about this and refine my pitch, refine my message, refine my mission, like, to really narrow it down, really understand what's going on in the market, really understand what it is that organizations are looking for, and actually how to stop talking about philosophy.
Yeah. And I like,
Like,
yeah.
oh, sorry. And I want to just emphasize
Yeah.
something very important that I had to learn, Sasha. And this is going to come off harsh,
Yeah.
but no one cares about your methodology.
Yeah.
No one cares about your precious way of doing things. And that is what I spent 2 to 3 years having to unlearn, that
Yeah.
what I thought was important and what I thought was interesting um had to come later in the whole process. It was really about uh getting into that empathetic space and
Okay.
being able to talk to people about their stuff, and then I talk to my stuff. I talk about my stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, that's what I spent 3 years doing.
So let's unpack that a little bit. So if nobody, if the methodology that so many people, so many companies work to put together, and it's like that becomes, they think that that in essence is their essence, is their magic wand or stick or secret sauce. But are you then saying that if they don't care about that, do they care about like what the result is or what the end goal is, or okay, so tell me a little bit more about
So
that then.
I also had to unlearn that, yeah, okay. I had to unlearn that people want to hear about the benefits. People want to hear about the outcome. People want to hear about the results they're going to get.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's true, but I also think that um, it can go further than that. And
Yeah.
the insight that I've gained is that people want to know that you really understand them, that you can speak their language,
Yeah.
that you understand their problem more than understand what they may want as a solution, because they may not know what they want.
Yeah.
There's a difference. For example, like, let's say you're an executive, like a manager, and you've got a team of people, and I come to you, you and I are sitting down, and I go, well, if you want to increase employee engagement, you want to have critical thinking and thoughtful employees who are really able to focus and engage with their work, right? That's one way. And I could even say, the results that I've gotten has been higher retention rates, right?
Yeah.
Right. or I can sit down and look you in the eye and say, so how's your revolving office door been looking like lately?
Yeah. So you're
Who,
immediately,
where it's like, okay,
yeah,
so when was the last time somebody sat down in tears in your office?
yeah,
So it's right. That is a completely different connection. That is a completely different mindset. And it's a use of language that
yeah,
you would understand.
yeah. It's a complete shift. It's a complete shift because you're not coming in there and giving them the solution. You're talking about the problem before you even talk about the solution, correct?
Correct. It's like you don't talk about the methodology. You don't even really say, like, I can increase your retention rates. You're like, honestly, like, yeah, I guess I really need to do that, but I'm actually dealing with like people that are in meltdown right now.
Mhm.
I've got 5 people with their foot out the door. I'm about to experience a mass exodus, right? So if I were to sit down and say, okay, so what number meltdown are you in today?
Yeah,
Like immediately you're like, she understands me.
yeah, yeah,
And so that was what I had to also spend I had to understand language. Even though I came from that world, even though I came from the business world, I had to read articles and interviews, and I had to really embody and speak that business language of my target audience,
yeah,
and then be able to map those problems to my solutions to make sure that I was ready.
yeah.
But it's really about educating yourself about it's educating yourself on how to not be yourself in a way.
It's pretty big. Educating yourself into not educating yourself into not being yourself and kind of unlearning that process and where you've come from because we've been kind of indoctrinated in some sense in terms of a lot of the ways that we should be thinking and how we should put forth a certain process, right? And I like that you say you had to learn the language. I like that you say that you embodied yourself because it is becoming your audience, it's becoming your target. Now, you may have come to a point where you're like, there's a gap in the market, this is needed. But this is where a lot of startups go through issues when it comes to product market fit. They can have an incredible product, but it boils down to the actual communication and how are you talking to somebody about their problem that you've developed this amazing solution for. And because they keep talking about the solution and the methodology versus talking about the problem at hand and what people are experiencing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
And
it's just
if oh sorry, if you
no, go
really
ahead.
want to boil it down even further to the essential philosophical problem, is that people want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be recognized.
Yeah, and
So if you could talk
that
about their problem in their language, they feel seen, they feel heard.
yeah. And that is in essence like your what you're delivering, right? I mean, you're honestly kind of showing them a piece of what your service is without doing the sale, if that makes sense, right? It's like you're kind of, here's what I can do for you without even going into what you've done, what you do, right? Because they immediately get it without you having to sit there and think about, oh, what is my 30-second line or what is my mission statement or what is this, right? I mean, it's just being able to craft the solution against the problem and kind of showcase just in conversation how it works.
Yeah, it's a form of modeling for them without them realizing it, but also at the same time them getting immense value out of the conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
So
then they're like, oh well, I never thought of things like that. Or after a little bit of, I never really thought about this like that. And then I'll just say, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And then
It's
it's like,
almost like
well,
you're setting up like a mindset changing activity without even it being established. That it's an activity, but it's an activity that's actually happening within the conversation.
correct.
Yes. Which is a very profound shift with anybody when you're walking in through the front door and you're basically ultimately selling yourself and telling them why your product and service is going to be great for them. I love that. So the shift obviously in this conversation has been profound. I mean, you have conversations. It's, there is no, you're not met with, oh, this isn't for us, but you're met more with, oh, I didn't think about it like you said like this, or this is how it's supposed to be, and so on and so forth. So it became a completely different conversation from the get-go for you.
Correct. And therefore memorable. So
Yeah.
I can't always say that I have someone off the bat join my mastermind or sign me up for, a workshop at their company, but they will introduce me to people and they will invite me to things, and that's really also that's part of the work too. Uh and I've had people that I met like 3 years ago who are now some of my biggest referrers of
Yeah.
business, even though it's not something that they can utilize themselves.
Yeah.
But that I also had to shift how I worked with people, and that was something else that was, I had to say, you know what? Because I got to a point where I was like, all right, well, I can't do everything. And there's a lot of things that I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one-on-one advising was actually one of the biggest things because I really thought like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And it turned out I ran a pilot mastermind group, a philosophy mastermind group with four CEOs, four C-level executives. I had a chief strategy officer and three CEOs. And it was just a 1 month mastermind. And I loved it,
Yeah.
loved it. And I was like, I think I like working with groups. So then you make that decision. Okay, I'm going to set that aside,
Yeah.
and you continue to figure out the things that you love to do. And where I'm at now is I love running mastermind groups and retreats. So that's another line of business that I've gotten into is running retreats, which I love very much. And so a lot has kind of gone by the wayside, but were good learning opportunities in order for me to be able to express and manifest the kind of work that I'm doing now. And that's the other thing. It may not be whatever it is that you're doing now. Don't discount it if it doesn't work out or you decide to move on, because I guarantee whatever skill set that you build doing that thing is going to come into
Add
play in
value.
the
Yeah.
thing you're going to want to do.
Yeah, totally. No time is ever wasted with building what you're building till you get to the point where you're like, this is it. And this is what is in demand for me. That's incredible, Christina. I mean, so two more questions before I let you go, because this conversation could go on for hours, just based on the topic and just an incredible mind in terms of how you work and, obviously knowing each other for so many years. But tell us when somebody works with you, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty, but it's like, what is the actual like end result? And I don't mean to use the word end result, because I don't think with what you are doing, there is an end, because it's growth and it's evolving for the folks that you work with. But at least tell us, what comes out, what comes out of these, groups, these, the seminars that you have or the retreats that you do and so on.
I definitely, Well, what I can say happens is a transformation. And I think the transformation is different for everyone. So, but what I can say is I've experienced people sort of come into the work feeling like there's got to be more than this. Like having this kind of not fear necessarily, but this kind of like, um, oh, I don't know how life's going to go,
Yeah, yeah,
this just feeling of angst or almost giving up, or a feeling of overwhelm or lack of focus, or, and then after the work, it's like, okay, um, I've got a few things to think about, and I'm excited
yeah,
to think about them.
yeah,
And I'm excited that I now have a direction, or I feel re energized, or I feel like I have agency, I have a sense of control over things, and I've got tools to deal with whatever comes my way. Like that is sort of the general sentiment. So it's almost kind of this like receiving someone who's kind of in a slight state of chaos, and then kind of working with them, getting them, you know, to deconstruct a few things and to rebuild a few things, and then kind of sending them
yeah,
off
yeah,
feeling
totally.
like, ah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
It's obviously that is an oversimplification, but that's the best that I can
Yeah.
offer.
I love it. Oh my gosh, this has been incredible, and I'd love to have you on again just to, dig in a little deeper, but to leave the audience, what are the three pieces of advice that you could give an entrepreneur in terms of growing on their path?
Mm.
Um, we've talked about a lot, and I know we've talked about
Yeah.
three
Oh
of
yeah.
them, but
Just
consolidate it
three?
for us. Yeah, just three, or
Just three?
if you want to give us more, that's great.
All right. 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 The first thing is, especially if you're bootstrapping,
Yeah.
okay, like I have been basically, be very, very careful in how you spend your money. There are a lot of people out there who are going to tell you, oh no, you absolutely need to have this like
Yeah.
Facebook advertising boot camp because you don't know how to advertise on Facebook, right? I never needed to use a Facebook ad. Like
Yeah.
I would say that if I could get back money that I spent on things that I got sold
That you didn't
that
even
I
need.
thought I needed and I don't even need, I would probably be about $30,000 richer. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
So spend your money wisely. The wise choices I spent my money on were a really good brand designer, because I absolutely love my new Everyday Philosophy brand, which I'm going to be launching the website very, very soon. A
Amazing.
good brand designer. And when you figure out your brand, um, and joining business networking communities, like really good ones, because the second piece of advice that I have is you cannot do this alone. Community and networking with other people, in a sort of closed off group, not just LinkedIn, which is like pretty open, but in a group where people can get to know you, they can get to know what it is that you do, they can bond with you, is worth its weight in gold. So definitely invest in really good groups. I belong to the C-suite network, for example, and also Leadership Global, great groups. So anyone who's trying to do this solo, like
Yeah. It's not going to work.
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing. And then the third thing I think is do not be afraid of the thing that makes you special,
Yeah.
even if it's juggling.
Yeah.
You can create an
Beautiful.
entire team engagement, team building business with your juggling.
Yeah.
So uh, just don't be afraid of people thinking that it's silly, or don't be afraid that you think it might not be, it's not serious enough, and there's all these other serious people in business. um just really truly allow yourself to be unique, and
Embrace it.
because that's what's going to help you stand out. No
Yeah.
one's going to remember, no one's going to remember the 10th team engagement person that has walked through their door, but they will remember the very happy juggler that came
Yeah.
through their office.
Totally. Oh my gosh. And really embrace your authenticity, embrace yourself. Don't be afraid to shine. Because your uniqueness is you. And I love that. It's what makes you, that is your differentiation. It will always be. When somebody's asking you to put that to paper about whatever you're putting out there, and there are competitors, talk about why you are different and how you tell your story differently, essentially. I love it, Christina. This has been amazing as always. I mean, we could go on and on. I love it. Congratulations to you. And I can't wait to learn more.
Same to
Tell
you, Satcha.
tell us, well,
Thank
the brand
you.
is coming out before we hang up because I will definitely have links to everything. So you guys, you can find Christina on LinkedIn. Her first name is not spelled CHR, it's Christina. Last name is DiGiacomo. And what is the link to your website, Christina?
It'll be everydayphilosophy.com.
Perfect. Well, we'll definitely have folks head over there. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Sasha. Thank you, everybody. Bye.